Hello, everyone. My name is Monsi. I'm the Regional Director for the Americas here at SCA, part of the Community Experience team, and I'm honored to be your host for this upcoming session for Green Coffee Summit. We're going to get more familiar with the North America market. I'm going to pull up some slides, and thank you again for joining us. So for the next few minutes, I'm going to share some data about coffee consumption trends in North America, with the particular focus on United States. And then I'll be joined by 3 panelists who work in this region to hear more about their perceptions and experiences buying and selling coffee. We drew a lot of this data from Euromonitor, which is a market research firm we have partnered with for many years to complement some of what we know from our community surveys with national level consumption data. We also have more information about the United States because for the past 2 years, the SCA has partnered with the National Coffee Association, or NCA, to produce and publish the National Coffee Data Trends Survey. So here are some good things to know about the region. First, the US is the largest single consumer coffee market in the region and the world, dwarfing Mexico and Canada. Also, while North America is a single landmass, it does not operate like a single market when it comes to coffee. The footprint of some brands, like Tim Hortons, extends across national boundaries. There are many similarities between markets, especially the US and Canada, but sellers should also recognize differences between the countries, particularly as regulations and responses to COVID in recent years have differed from country to country. All 3 countries saw a drop in coffee retail volumes in 2020 and have rebounded since, though different retail categories have benefited in each region. Likewise, all 3 countries have seen a shift to more in-home consumption and premiumization in response to lockdowns. Keurig Dr. Pepper Inc. retains leadership of retail, what we see in the US as grocery, with the 21% retail value share, and Starbucks is the leading food service or brewed coffee player at 32%. It's also worth noting that Starbucks has a grocery presence through its partnership with Nestle. In the US, the bars and pubs category has made a stronger recovery than cafes or coffee and tea shops. Shift to home coffee preparation is persistent and affects market for super premium coffees, microlots. Despite the challenges in and out of home sales, brands continue to innovate how they reach consumers at home, including subscriptions, think of Onyx, and the use of social media. Think of all the TikTok beverage fads that we're seeing. Next, I'll share some insights from the National Coffee Data Trends Survey I mentioned a few minutes ago. For this survey, the research firm interviews hundreds of coffee drinkers, and the results are always interesting. For example, in January 2022, 66% of Americans aged 18 and over said they had a coffee the day before. This is a significant increase when compared to July 2021. This is driven by the consumption in the 40-plus age group. Out-of-home coffee preparation remains below pre-pandemic levels, but 84% of respondents made coffee at home, indicating there may be opportunity for coffee companies to market new product offerings to these consumers. In January 2022, 43% had a specialty coffee beverage the day before, the highest level since 2016, which suggests that the pandemic didn't prompt a major shift away from higher value specialty coffee by consumers. In US, the consumers primarily use drip machines at home and consume espresso beverages outside of the home. This is different from the EU, which we'll examine later this week during the Thursday session. You may or may not be surprised to hear that cold brew is still a thing in the winter. 13% of past day coffee drinkers made cold brew, even in January. Also, it's really the younger consumers driving afternoon and cold coffee sales. And that's where a lot of growth is happening. We heard about attributes at the beginning of the day, and now we can look at them in context of consumer preferences. So I know that these slides are too small to read, and thanks to SA's partnership with NCA, the Specialty Coffee Breakout Report in the survey is available to everyone free of charge. So you can dig into the details at a later time on your own. Here are some of the points worth noting. First, association of coffee to any producing country is down versus pre-pandemic, which suggests a shift in priorities in, or at the very least, attention on the part of the consumers. On the other hand, attention to claims that an impact of claims on purchasing intent back to pre-pandemic levels. This suggests that consumers are engaged again versus early in the pandemic. When we look at the factors that influence consumer willingness to purchase, we find a mix of intrinsic and extrinsic attributes at the top of the list for impact on intent. So intrinsic is roast level, freshness, natural process. Extrinsic, sorry, can't say this today. Fair price to farmer, treat workers well, grown in an environmentally sustainable way. We don't have the same, changing the slide. We don't have the same amount of data from Mexico to pull from, but as a producer and consumer in the region, it's an important country to pay attention to, an interesting market juxtaposed with its neighbor to the north. In Mexico, the category of cafes is the best performing category. In 2021 versus the bars and pubs, coffee, tea specialist shops, juice, smoothie bars. Growth was quite different between chains and independents. Chain specialist coffee and tea shops and many other business types were counted in the survey, contracted in 2021. But independent specialty coffee and tea shops grew by all measures. This includes number of outlets, number of transactions, value. In fact, all of the categories counted, including bars, pubs, juice bars, cafes, specialty coffee and tea shops, the independent specialty coffee and tea shops had the highest percentage in food service value at 24.9%. Brands including Cielito Querido and Juan Valdez continue to expand their presence across channels from food service to retailing and vice versa. Both Juan Valdez and Nescafe are expanding their offerings of coffee machines to convenience and grocery stores, betting that consumers will be eager to partake in premium coffee without visiting the specialized shops. One shift worth paying attention to is the choice of the Canadian brand Tim Hortons. They entered Mexico and use only Mexican coffee from Chiapas in its outlets, thus meeting the local taste preference of Mexican consumers. In Canada, juice smoothie bars were the best performing category in 2021 versus the bars and pubs, cafes, coffee and tea, specialty shops, as we were discussing. Consumers cite health concerns and alcohol consumption being down since the beginning of the pandemic. It's worth noting that the data shows the number of retail outlets dropped in 2021 from 2020 across the category of specialty coffee and tea shops. Both chains and independents are included. But the number of transactions and value were both up from 2020. In terms of similarities and differences with the US market, Starbucks Coffee Canada Inc. is the food service leader in Canada, as well as here, with 25% food service value. Differentiating the two in Canada, 60.5% of businesses operating reported that they needed that PPE to operate PPE in order to operate in accordance with the COVID-19 related public health guidelines. This seemed interesting in contrast to the US, where businesses were less regulated. Also, they sustained COVID-19 related closures, and the fact that there were more restrictions in Canada around gathering publicly means that the 2019 and 2020 drops were pretty steep. Since the data from macro level reports like the ones we use to compile this overview takes a few months to collect, process, and publish, we're inevitably a few months behind today's trends. Looking at where we are now, it's possible to forecast some of the factors that will be impacting businesses in this coming year, including the pressures of inflation and supply chain disruptions, which continue to affect the coffee trade, even if they're not making news the same way they were a year ago. Also, the rising costs of hiring and staffing is a consideration for employers of all sizes, and workers continue to experience burnout and seek alternatives to low-paying, stressful work, like some of the positions that the coffee industry relies on. Thankfully, there are opportunities as well as challenges. The high percentage of respondents making coffee at home across all markets, particularly in the US, suggests that the direct-to-consumer channels are still worth exploring. It's not just a pandemic thing. The renewed interest in claims attributes is a reminder of how companies use information to differentiate coffee products. Also, cold coffee and afternoon coffee consumption present opportunities for growth and product experimentation. It's nothing to say of functional beverages. Finally, we should continue to pay attention to domestic consumption in Mexico, which is one of the many coffee-producing countries with a rapidly evolving and innovating culture of coffee drinking. Next, I'm going to have my panelists join me on video here. As they are getting settled in, I want to share how the rest of this hour will go. Our panelists will share their individual experiences that complement this general overview that we just reviewed. And at the end, I'm going to leave some time so that the audience can ask a few questions. I'm joined by Anna, Janine, and Stephanie, and we're going to talk about what we're seeing in the market and what's working for buyers and sellers. Let me just get Anna up here. And maybe while she's coming back on the screen here, we can start with some of the intros. Now, I know everybody has access to the speaker bios, but I thought it would still help to have our speakers just introduce themselves really quickly, talk a little bit about your role at your company, what your company does, and specifically what business you do in the North American market. Would it be okay to start with you, Janine?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone, or evening or morning, depending where you are in the world. My name is Janine Aroyan. I am the founder and owner of JNP Coffee. And JNP Coffee, we produce and export and import specialty coffee from Burundi, which is my home country. And I'm also a board member at the Specialty Coffee Association, SCA, and just so glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Janine. Why don't we have Stephanie go next?
Hi, thank you again, Monsi and SCA, for inviting us all to be here today. My name is Stephanie Alcala. In March 2020, I joined RGC Coffee, a purpose-driven, family-owned green coffee importer. RGC's core mission is to deliver innovative and scalable business solutions to make the world a better place. I began as a trading assistant to our current president, Natalie Gabbay, and I now work in sustainable sales and communications, really trying to grow our value-added in-brand line of sustainable coffees. And about half of our business is done here in North America, where we buy coffees around the world, primarily Latin countries, and then handle the logistics and services to bring and deliver the coffee here to our clients.
Thank you, Stephanie. And Anna.
Yeah. Hello, everyone, and thank you, Nancy, for inviting me to the panel. My name is Anna Abatzoglou, and I work for Purpose Excellence and Alliance for Coffee Excellence. I'm the managing director for previously, I actually worked for Alliance for Coffee Excellence and Cup of Excellence back in 2013, 2014. My experience is in the food and oh, hard to hear me. Okay, sorry, I turned it up a little bit more. Okay, let me know if you can hear me better now. Okay, cool. So I previously worked for the 5th largest hog slaughterhouse in the U.S. and also worked for a very large brewery based here in Oregon, and I worked for a big beverage distributor. So my experience is in food and beverage, mostly beverage, and I've been with Cup of Excellence since 2020, right before the pandemic hit. And our mission is really to recognize and reward coffee producers. And I'm really happy to be a part of this panel and to talk with you all.
Thank you. Sorry, it is a little bit scratchy, so maybe we'll figure that out while we move along. But I got most of it, and I think what the audience can see here is that we've selected some panelists that come from various regions across the U.S., also different types of companies, and that's just going to be really valuable because the experiences that they each share is going to be obviously different, and hopefully there's something that every audience member can connect with from what they're going to have to say. So I'm really grateful for having Janine, Anna, and Stephanie here. Thank you so much. And I think the next part that I want to make sure that we get into is looking into the current market for buyers and sellers of green coffee. What we've talked about is so far is just your roles and responsibilities, and we heard all of this data and trends that are happening. But from your experiences, can you tell us what you're seeing in the current market? And again, this is not reflective of the entire North America market, but this is just the experience of Janine, Stephanie, and Anna. So we'll start with, can we start with you, Anna? Let's see if this...
Okay. So working for RGC, a full service green coffee importing company for the past 2.5 years, I see two major trends. One, the cost of logistics has sharply increased, and two, transit times have almost doubled, from delayed crops due to weather to hard to obtain bookings to delayed strippings to securing truckers. Everything's just taking longer. So the current market, from my perspective, is everything's more expensive for everyone and everything is taking longer. So plan ahead.
I know that act of planning ahead has never been truer in these times, right? Janine, what do you have to share from your experience? Is that similar to Stephanie, or I know you have some other experience on the ground at the producer level as well?
Nancy, do you want to rephrase your question? The video is not stable. I don't know if you experienced the same problems, but I am getting in and out in terms of the video. Can you please ask your question again? Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. We're able to see you and hear you just fine. And I was just asking about your experience in the current market for buyers and sellers. Like, what are you experiencing at this moment? What's the current trends that you're seeing?
So the current trends that we are seeing right now are very similar to actually what Stephanie has said, in terms of the issues in regarding to logistics sale are the biggest, challenges that we are still facing right now. And we are trying to get ahead of it at this point and trying to get shipments out of Africa as soon as possible. And some of the trends also we have seen here lately is just a little bit of a shift. We've seen some of the consumers, roasters particularly, who have, chosen to, shift a little bit in terms of what they are going to be buying, this harvest, and letting the coffee that have arrived late due then again to the global challenge with logistics last year, sink in and get those coffee being utilized before they can, get on on a schedule and then start ordering for the new harvest. So those are like the typical trend that I'm seeing. It's not everybody across the board, but I'm seeing a lot of hedging, if I might say, where some roaster might say, yeah, I think I'm going to just like see if I can skip this, this time. We're not giving up on you. We're not giving up on the country, but we are going to just, skip it a little bit, and we can be able to catch up, with our inventory and then come back later. Those are some of the trends that I want to share, that I have been seeing, on and off with some roasters.
Yeah, and that makes it super difficult to create that relationship model that everyone wants to seek, right? So that's a big point. Thank you for bringing that up, Janine. Anna, how about you? Are you audible now? No, it's still not showing your volume. Okay, we will come back. I know Anna has a couple of really great points to share, so I want to make sure we figure this out. But as soon as we have you audible, we'll get you back in here. Janine, you mentioned some of that roaster purchasing decisions, and that's actually one of my next questions. I wanted to have all of the panelists share about like purchasing decisions. What do those look like for customers, for roasters, for consumers? And, the impact, just because roasters are saying to you, Janine, that, hey, we can't, purchase right now and we're going to come back later, that coffee's still there. So what are the things that you're having to do to get that coffee sold? And it's just interesting to hear about the struggles on both ends, which you have a unique perspective on.
Sure. Do you want me to go first, or do you want Stephanie to answer the question?
Yeah, why don't you go, since you went into that topic already? Let's just go into that.
So I think, so some of the creativity, I guess it's always about, being creative and trying to think about differently and trying to do things a little bit different to, try to reach different markets. So some of the things that actually we are doing for the first time, us at JNP Coffee, we are for the first time ever, we are going to launch a private auction, which I'm very, very excited actually to be able to share the news here. And this private auction hopefully is going to kind of help us to, to showcase some of the amazing coffees coming from Burundi, and hopefully also be able to open opportunities for others who have never tried a coffee, have never known about even Burundi as a country, or even like a great origin for specialty coffee, to be able to try those coffee and be able to have access to those coffee and really be able to expand that reach than what we currently have right now.
Thank you. Stephanie, do you want to jump in here too on just purchasing decisions that you're noticing from your customers?
Yeah, from my side, Janine, also, that's really exciting. So congratulations on that. And yeah, I guess what I've been seeing, I think what the pandemic really brought to light was how there are challenges across the board for everyone. But right now, we're living in a climate-driven coffee world, and we need to really focus on providing solutions for coffee growing communities. And from purchasing, everyone wants to buy sustainable coffee. They want to support people and the planet. But I see that two factors are really the driving forces behind purchasing decisions right now. And that's quality and price. Coffee has to meet, first and foremost, quality expectations and the demand from consumers. And it must be price competitive. Only if these two factors are met, then we can take into consideration sustainability. But it's been really difficult to really it's to find the price, the quality, and the sustainability initiatives all in one. But that's what ideally everybody, in an ideal world, that's what everybody wants.
Yeah, that's the wish list, right? And then coupled with what you both mentioned earlier, the fact that people have to plan early, which may or may not happen for everybody, to know what they're wanting to purchase, and also all the delays that we're seeing, right? So it is a tricky marketplace. And this isn't, all of these issues are not new, but all of them happening all at the same time, definitely something a bit more of a challenge than previous years. I know that we have Anna back, and I really want to try to get her some airtime here. Are you audible? Yeah, let's have Anna call in, because there are some really cool things that she shared with us earlier, and I would love to have her speak to those. Let's kind of go into, while we wait for Anna to come back, here's what I'm going to ask Janine and Stephanie, at least for the next question and for a few minutes here. We can definitely talk about, some of these like challenges that I know everyone can relate to. But I think one of the interesting things in your perspectives are what is going to be happening, what you're kind of seeing based on your roles for future market trends. So maybe we can jump into that question, and then we can come back to some of what some of the answers from Anna's perspective after that. So and we can also open it up to questions from the audience, which I know I see some of those coming in. So give us a few minutes here, and we'll just see if we can't do our moderated session first and then get into those questions. But let's talk to Janine and Stephanie real quick about any of the future trends that they're going to be able to share based on their experience.
All right, I think I'm going to go, Stephanie. I was waiting for you to take the mic. I think in terms of future trends, and actually I kind of want to mention to what Stephanie had just said earlier, which I think is very, very important in terms of trying to figure out, how to balance between, price, quality, and sustainability, which I think it's very key, given where we are and just the industry being very sensitive on the price. Some of the things that I think I had mentioned about this private auction that we have launched, that we are doing for the first time, in terms of like future trend, and also some of the things that we are doing very differently on our end, is actually to utilize the proceeds for the private auction we're going to be launching to do more of the sustainable programs that we think are very important and very vital to a place like Burundi, where we source our coffee. So those are the things that I think are very important, and also some of the things are the future, for the market, that are very important in terms of the certification. Like we know, most of the small coffee holders in places like Burundi, they cannot afford to actually pay for their own certification. So most of the time, it becomes like companies like ourselves, even our partners, roasters, who will be engaging in trying to support some of those initiatives to actually bring in those certification they are looking for, that being the rainforest, that being the organic certification, because those, they sometimes not cost a lot of money, but they also take time to implement. So those are the initiatives that we are taking forward, which I think are very, very exciting for us, because it's a first where we use the net proceed for what's going to be coming out of this private auction we are launching in November, that we are going to be utilizing to do more training in financial literacy, which we think are extremely important for women coffee farmers, and also doing things like training in coffee for the youth in coffee specifically, and also being able to provide some funding for these certifications that are very needed for our clients, and as well as for the environment, and as well as the world that we live in. So that's what I have to share on our end.
Janine's just saving the world one coffee at a time. I love it. Thank you. That's amazing. Stephanie, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, something similar on the lines of, I think it's really important to have boots on the ground. So similar to Janine's work and her company, we do similar work at RGC Coffee. We have an incredible sustainability department and team based in Bogota, Colombia. And what we've really been doing is developing community projects across our supply chains. And we co-develop these projects together with coffee growing communities, with our in-country partners, exporters, suppliers, civil society organizations. And so for the past really 15 years, but the past, I say 8 years, they've really become these holistic sustainability programs that are scalable and replicable by design. And so what we've been really working towards is building these programs across our supply chains to develop local solutions and together with our partners on the ground. And so by providing local solutions, we're reinvesting into the economies of our coffee growing partners and just really investing in building resilient and sustainable supply chains. And so it's this shift away from, if you're working with your partners and you have trusted partnerships rooted in shared value, then you can move away from certifications and really understand that your coffee purchases are making real impact that is carried through the entire supply chain. And like you're saying about these long-term partnerships, it's really crucial to have these so that you can maintain your sustainability initiatives. And so working at RGC, our benefit really is that we're able to use economies of scale, and then our strategic position in the supply chain as an importer, we have one foot in producing countries and one foot in consuming countries. And so we're this bridge of sustainability.
No, I love that. And both, I mean, these are both different types of tools that are available to everyone here in the North American market. If you're looking to purchase coffee, working with your importer, whether you be aligned on the mission fulfillment work and ensuring that there's boots on the ground, like Stephanie said, or you're seeking because of your alignment to a certain certification. I think this is great because both of you are sharing these different perspectives that I think a lot of the audience, especially a lot of the roaster community, can align themselves with. And let's remember that these are tools available to us, especially in times when it's not as accessible to go out and visit because of the expenses that are associated with it, right? So if you really want to expand your offering and you're looking for newer ways to do that, please consider what Stephanie and Janine are saying here, especially in terms of having a resource available that's literally within your fingertips right here. So I appreciate those perspectives right there. And I see Anna, and I really want her to say a few words.
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Oh yeah, big fans.
Oh God, tried the all on and off, and it yeah. So yeah, good old trusty phone is working. Yeah, I just wanted to touch on the first kind of the first topic about the kind of like what's the market for buyers and sellers of green coffee. And with Cup of Excellence and Alliance for Coffee Excellence, we are a membership-based organization, and we've seen. I looked at the numbers yesterday for North America, and we've been up 270% since right before the pandemic. So we are seeing big support from the U.S. and it's a mix of, lapsed members, of members that have been, that have maybe come back after a long period of time, existing members, and just brand new members. And I think it's I think it's a big change with in terms of like bringing on new programs to Cup of Excellence. I think that's helping to create some interest and draw in more buyers into our markets.
Yeah, and then Anna, you also had a really interesting perspective on purchasing decisions. You're able to see something kind of unique based on your position at this organization. Could you share a bit of that too?
Yeah, there's a lot, very multi-pronged. I mean, we are seeing an uptick in buying groups. And so, sometimes it's hard to digest like buying a full Cup of Excellence lot. So we've been putting together buying groups, so basically we organize it all on WhatsApp. And these can be international buying groups. They can be buying groups just in one country, basically, and it could, a buyer could just want one box or they could want 5 boxes. And it's helping to just bring in more buyers and to make, bringing in coffee a lot more digestible. And it really, sometimes it forms very organically. We have these WhatsApp channels for each competition, and it's kind of in the Cup of Excellence ecosystem. So buyers will start talking and they're like, hey, I'm looking at this one, and another buyer says, I like that too. And then sometimes these decisions happen before an auction. Sometimes it's during an auction because they don't know, like, oh, the price went up, by double what I wanted to pay. And so they, so maybe they back out. And also after the auction too. If some, a buyer a bidder didn't win, but they still want a piece of the, Columbia, 22 Cup of Excellence competition, they check in with our group and say, hey, we're looking for, can someone sell me a bag? And now we have it. It's really easy to join a buying group because basically everything just gets shipped directly from origin to your country. So it's very straightforward. And then basically just you pay to origin directly. So it doesn't go through like the lead buyer. But then, yeah, we're also seeing purchasing decisions based off of, other factors like, maybe they're, someone's been buying coffee from a particular region in a country, and then they see that there are a few Cup of Excellence winners coming up from that same region. So they buy based off of that, and they buy based off of trusting the jury's evaluation. So without even tasting coffee, sometimes they look at the scores and they look at who was on the jury, and they know that these jurists, both the national jurists who are the the best coffee tasters in that particular country, they know the coffees very well, and then the international jurists, they see these these coffee tasters, and they're like, okay, we trust them, we trust their evaluation techniques, and it's Cup of Excellence is we have a very strict protocol, and I think that there's some trust in the general community. So those are a few trends, a few topics to bring up.
Yeah, and thank you. I'm so glad your audio is working now. And absolutely, what you're saying about trust is, I think that's the theme, right? When things get challenging, yes, you have to innovate. Yes, you have to figure out new solutions for how to make your purchasing decisions work. But at the same time, let's not forget that these organizations, all of them, like Janine's business, Stephanie's part of a bigger group that imports coffee, and then even, Anna, like, I think all 3 panelists have been able to share that there is a lot of work going in at the organization level to not just win that trust, but to really prove to the customers that this is part of the mission and values of those organizations, and they want to share that back with the customer. And those are the types of tools that I hope that the audience is able to take away. I know that we're talking about all different sizes here, like all types of folks that are purchasing, maybe big containers or small like bags, like Anna was saying, from those roasting groups. But that's what's really nice to know, that we have a real big ones for first of all, the US is so big, so there is a lot of different customers here. But at the same time, what the market is telling us is there's space for all of us too, right? So I do want to, any other comments from our panelists? I don't want to shut off our moderated session, but I do want to get to some of the questions that the audience would be giving us. But feel free to chime in here. You can all unmute. Now that we're all audible, I love it. We're back to that point.
I have a question actually for Anna.
Go for it.
I'm just curious if you could explain, I guess how do you generate awareness and promote these auctions within the countries that you host them in? Like, how do you get farmers and producers to participate?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in each country we have an in-country partner, and we work with them to socialize the competition. And it's a long process. It doesn't happen just one call, hey, out to one call to all the farmers, hey, submit your coffees now. There's a lead up to it, and there are a lot of follow-ups. And so basically the in-country partner will send a message out to all the producers, and any producer can enter their coffee in Cup of Excellence. And with that, there's a certain timeline and when they have to submit their coffee to meet all to start the pre-selection process, and then to go from the national stage and the international stage. So and it really depends. Like every country has their way of, their effective way of communicating. But yeah, that's how, we work with our partners. And there is and of course we're always trying to get better. We're always looking for continuous improvement. So yeah, we try to make sure all the producers in the country know.
Thank you. I do see a question for Anna as well from the audience. It has to do with some of my retailer friends report lagging sales on CoE coffees, especially in the US. They say this is due to increased price sensitivity. Any comments? That definitely is in line with what all of you have shared already, that there's increased costs and a lot of lead time needed. But Anna, if you want to share from that.
Yeah, I know that's interesting. I know I've heard it sometimes a higher price can help the customer ask, like, hey, why is this coffee priced a little bit higher? And that helps to start the conversation on what Cup of Excellence is. And in terms of, I think it's, there's a lot of factors too with the higher price. I mean, some customers are like just looking at a price and that's how they make the decision. But, we're really trying to bring a face to coffee and really trying to show that this is life-changing coffee. And so, we see success in some retailers who are able to, maybe have specific tactics, like they're giving out free samples of the coffee. And so customers are able to try it, like, oh, I can see why, why that I would want to pay a little bit more. This is a premium product. So I think it maybe goes back to what we were talking about in the beginning, like what are some of the factors, like the intrinsic and extrinsic factors that customers are looking for, and hitting on those and relating it back to why Cup of Excellence coffee is so special. Because you can connect those to Cup of Excellence coffee. With all of our winning lots, we have farm stories, we have photos of the farmer, and you do see retailers taking advantage of that and helping to connect the farmer to the consumer.
Yeah, and something you had mentioned in our pre-interviews, Anna, was regards to you all looking at new locations as well. And it sounds funny to say new locations because these locations always existed, but newer coffees to the CoE offerings. You had a specific name for those types of auctions, right?
Yeah. So we have, so we are, one thing we're working on is expanding our programming, and through that we are working on a pilot program, a Cup of Excellence pilot program right now with Thailand. We just announced the winners, and then we're also working. We have a private collection auction series, so again, it's aligned with our mission to discover quality coffee and make sure that producers are rewarded. So we have we did something called the Best of Yemen with Kima Coffee. We've been doing that program, private collection auction, with them for a few years. We've been working with Taiwan, which has been super successful. We've had 2 auctions so far, and that's we started working with them back in 2021. And, we're talking with them now about possibly doing a Cup of Excellence. So, but it's not, there's a lot of lead up and organization to get to that point. And and then we work with other, even countries where we have an existing Cup of Excellence competition. We are focusing more on a specific area. So we have, we're doing an auction that's actually, the coffees are getting evaluated right now. It is it's with Silvio Lette, so it's going to be basically Silvio Lette's Secret Treasures, and we're focusing on the Bahia region, which is actually an original region where specialty coffee was identified. And of course, Brazil is the birthplace of Cup of Excellence. So we have Brazil, but we are, for this private collection auction, we're really just focusing on a small area. And with that, we're able to pinpoint specific quality and to also, celebrate.
Go for it if you want to finish your thought there, Anna. You got cut off right there.
Yeah. So let's see. Yeah. So I guess like the end point is we're just trying to continuously to discover new quality in coffee.
Yeah, continue that innovation and keep looking for the new areas, right? So we have one more question. If you can hang in there, make sure your technology does not go away. Wondering how does your organization determine the best cuppers in each country? If you have any information to share for that.
Yeah, so we have, to basically for the national jury, they have to go through a testing. It's a 2-day long period where they are, they're cupping and they're taking tests, and they have a final test at the end. They're working with a head judge, and so we have various head judges working with doing the national jury testing. So yeah, so it's a process. So once the team does get decided, it's kind of a big deal to be a part of that team, because they do a lot of heavy lifting. They're the ones evaluating all the coffees that get submitted. So, if it's, certain countries like Ethiopia, it could be over 1,000 coffees.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm checking to see if there's any other questions, but while we check in on that, I do have something that I was hoping that Stephanie could expand on. During the interviews, we had spoken a bit about a recent presentation that Stephanie had put together, and it was about more on the topic of sustainability. And Stephanie, I don't know if you have a few moments just to share on that, and I think our audience would find that relevant as well.
Sure. Yeah, I think the topic was the future of responsibly sourced coffee, and it's I think the ICO just announced that the theme is circular economy, and the talk kind of brushed on that as well, but it's just really that in coffee, there's so many different aspects to it, and that's what makes it so fun and so interesting, that you can view coffee through every single discipline of society, of the world, of in nature, of our human interactions, and that's how it connects us all. And so with that comes enormous possibilities of how we can make a real positive impact in this world. And so with coffee, we're trying to move towards a circular economy, zero waste, carbon neutrality, but also that we can really touch upon the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. We can address almost every single goal through coffee. And so each of us in the supply chain can really contribute towards sustainable development, whether you're a coffee producer, you're an importer, you're retail, wherever you are, you have an ability to make a positive impact. And we don't all have to contribute to all of them. We just find our lane, find our passions, and really invest. And it goes back to partnerships. If we're all here in the same industry and we all want to see it thrive. And so we just really need to work together to all do our part. And my prediction for the future of responsibly sourced coffee is just that. Like, how can we all create shared value while moving forward and using our businesses for good?
Hey. Thank you. I appreciate you sharing that. I know that we didn't get a chance to get that one in. Janine, I want to make sure that you could unmute here and maybe give some closing thoughts as well. I know you have so much to say, but a few minutes, please.
Yeah, so much to say in a very, small time frame, but I, really like what everybody has to share here, the panelists, in terms of the ideas about, it's really about sustainability at the end of the day. I think that's, we have to all keep digging on how do we keep our industry sustainable, and so many different things can be done. Like, Stephanie shared, we can just, each one of us have to kind of find a lane and then follow that lane forward, as long as we are contributing to that sustainability. It's almost like, you have to. It's funny because, in my situation, when I got in coffee, you go into coffee, you're thinking you're going to coffee, but there is just more than just coffee, especially when you're dealing in developing world, when you get the coffee from where most of these coffees from the world are coming from. You can't just be going there just to one thing. In my point of view, quality is the key for specialty coffee. That has to be, the basics of all the discussion. That's how I kind of view, specialty coffee, and then everything else that we do is just icing on the cake. And then what are those icing on the cake are? And then in my point of view, it's like those sustainable goals that each one of us, decide to work on and focus on. If it is working with women farmers, which it's a very much of an underutilized, resources that exists, like in our world, especially where coffee is grown. They're the one who do the work in the field, and what can you do more for them? If when like in our case, we propel and very much sustain our financial literacy programs, where we get our coffee. And there is just so much to do, and it's like we always start with one place, and then the more you grow, you find there is actually even more to do. Not just only with maybe teaching the farmers how to save money, but also you find out that, oh my goodness, now there is this issue now with environmental that has not been tapped. So like, for example, we are just battling on trying to actually find a way to clean water post processing, which is like a big issue that most people, consumers, even roasters, don't think about. That most of the water that get used, at windmills end up by going into streams that local community consume. If it's not clean, it makes them sick. So it's just little things like that I think are very, very important that we are after, like in our case, and trying to make sure that waters get clean, so the community doesn't drink, water that's full of high level of acidity, for example. I mean, I can go on and on and on, but that's just like few examples that I can share here. And really, it's not just only us as producers or exporters or importers, but also the roasters and also the consumers. We are all in this together. So how can we find ways and solutions to be really strengthening those issues that are more critical than just quality or than just cost, which I think are vital and also going to sustain the industry overall.
Yeah, thank you, Janine. I think each of the panelists had an opportunity to share just some really cool perspectives. I appreciate the three of you so much. Thank you for your energy and your time, and Anna, thanks, a special thanks for just being persistent to getting to the point where you could be audible with us. I'm so glad each of you had a chance to share. I do really think about everything that you all have said, and it, those closing thoughts especially like warm my heart. Like, it is absolutely something that each of us have some power to make some impact on and some change on. And we need to do it not just for ourselves, but for our businesses, for our industry. And I hope that folks have the energy to kind of see us through this. We're going to keep getting challenges. Those aren't going away, but our ability to work together. And I think somebody had mentioned it earlier. I think Anna was saying about trust. Without that, we don't have a lot to go off of. So the more we can trust each other, the more we can utilize all of the tools that we have available, the more we can keep talking. This type of interaction is so important. So I'm grateful for this opportunity to discuss this topic. I know there's a lot more we can discuss, but I think we covered a good amount of ground today. The topics of, everything that we discussed here, but then also throughout the day, the session that we had before this, we covered big complex topics like ethical purchasing, impact investing, and it's really helpful when people take this time to not just share, but also listen and ask the key questions that function basically to support the buyers and sellers of green coffee. So thank you to our panelists. I want to take a quick moment before we close out the session of this panel, but also for Green Coffee Summit today, to thank our sponsors. Our title sponsor, Barista Attitude, our supporting sponsors, BWT Water and More, Mercanta, and San Coffee Brazil. Your support is so helpful, and it makes everything on this event and these discussions possible. So thank you so much for your support. And finally, thanks to all of you. It's really helpful to have a great audience that was engaged and asking questions. I'm going to go look back and look at some of the comments that you all were leaving. I hope that this was helpful for all of you. I'm learning through all of you as well. Thank you.